Good morning, guys. Just wanted to give a video on fall lawn care now that we're in middle of October, specifically for centipede grass, and this may apply to like St. Augustine or something as well, but mainly centipede. For fall, you really want to, there's two things that you can really do in fall. One is now that the temperatures are creeping down into like the the 70s. We still have, actually, we had mid 80s yesterday, but it looks like the 10-day forecast is going to be uh, highs in the 60s and 70s, and the lows are getting down into the 40s. I think Saturday morning of this week, the low is like 41. So as the temperatures start winding down like this, you really don't want to feed your lawn, your centipede lawn, any nitrogen. You hear about these winterizers out there. It's really just kind of a marketing thing. Winterizer is no different than just your standard NPK bag of fertilizer. They just kind of market it that way and say, hey, throw this down in fall so your lawn can store up some nutrients over winter and then green up quickly in the spring. Well, that doesn't really apply to centipede. It really does to Bermuda and other grasses. But for centipede, like we've mentioned in another video about fertilization, you don't want to fertilize it really late in the year with any nitrogen. The only fertilizer that you would want to use is a potassium product with 0 nitrogen, 0 phosphorus. As we've said before, centipede does not like phosphorus at all. It ties up the iron in the plant, and the iron is what you need for the green photosynthesis to be able to green up really nicely. So you really only, as far as fertilizer goes, you really only want to feed it a potassium product like sulfate of potassium. It's called a few different things: sulfate of potash, potassium sulfate, or SOP. You might hear it abbreviated. But potassium sulfate's really kind of hard to find at your big box stores. Most of them use a muriate of potash, which is kind of a saltier product, saltier type of potassium. So it's not going to harm anything by giving your centipede lawn any muriate of potash unless you just overdose it with all that salt. But it's preferable if you can find a sulfate. It's a little bit milder, and it seems like it's less harmful to your centipede over time. You don't want all that salt build up from the muriate. And we'll go into humic acid as well, about how that can flush out the salts in your soil. But that's another video. But so the two main things you really want to do in fall is, like I said, give it a potassium boost. It's really going to help with the winter strength, because centipede's so sensitive to these cold temperatures that it needs that extra potassium to kind of store up that strength of the plant. It basically strengthens the cell walls of your grass to be able to withstand extreme cold, and any kind of drought conditions. You can still have drought conditions in the winter. I mean, we're not expecting anything like that this year because we had tons of rain last year throughout the winter, where it set records. It was so much. But you really want to give it that potassium to give it that strength to withstand that winter. You don't want any winter kill, which can happen with centipede if you get like extreme temperatures. And like we said before, if you feed it too late with nitrogen, you might get some winter kill. Any growth that you got for that nitrogen application might die off, and you'll see like big dead spots in your yard, which we don't want. So we covered the potassium. Like I said, it can be hard to find, but you can go to like a specialty store. If you have a Site One, that's SITEONE. It's a landscape supply company. I have 2 here in Birmingham. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. And and there's also like a Ewing landscape. I don't know if they have an SOP, but I know they have different potassium products you can use as far as a liquid. Now the liquids are good to use, but you're not going to get really as much potassium down into the plant. I have a dissolvable sulfate of potash that it's good. I mean, you just dissolve it in water and spray it over your yard, but it's not getting down as much as a granular would with a granular application. And you know, just one application in the fall, like around Labor Day, anywhere between Labor Day and like mid-October, like, or November, like we are now. Your centipede's gonna love that. Now, another thing you can do for fall is what I would recommend is putting down a pre-emergent. And you know, a lot of these pre-emergents have potassium in them, so that's really a good product to use. You can kind of kill two birds with one stone. It's a 007 is what you can find in the big box stores. Home Depot typically carries a Lesco product that's a 007. So you'd be getting potassium down as well as a pre-emergent. Now, most of your homeowners out there are not going to use pre-emergents. They're just going to deal with weeds as they see them. And that can really actually be beneficial to centipede. I've found with pre-emergents this year, I went ahead and skipped my spring pre-emergent because I've been doing some research on the effects of root pruners, which is what a pre-emergent is. It can also really hurt your root growth because that pre-emergent creates that barrier. It doesn't keep the weed from germinating. What happens is the weed will germinate through a seed, and then that barrier will keep that weed from growing. So it actually germinates, but that barrier keeps it from popping up through the soil if you apply your pre-emergent correctly and water it in and create that barrier once you water it in. But I didn't want to do a pre-emergent this spring because I wanted to test out the research that I've read about centipede being very sensitive to those. And I noticed last year I had such a bad weed problem. We've been in this house for 4 years, and I had such a horrible weed problem that I wanted to just feed it pre-emergents about every 3 or 4 months and just see what I could do to, instead of having to post-emergently take care of the weeds, I wanted to see what a pre-emergent could do. And I noticed, even though it pretty much wiped out my weeds, I was getting no spreading. The centipede did not like all that pre-emergent barrier in there, and the stolons, like we talked about before, that run across the surface of the soil, could not tack down into the soil. They would hit that barrier, that chemical barrier that is placed from the pre-emergent, and just skid across the soil and not have anywhere to take root. And I was like, I'm gonna test that this year and see what happens when I don't use a spring pre-emergent. And man, I've noticed amazing fill-in, like I mentioned before in another video. The stolons have been growing horizontally and laterally and been able to fill in a lot of these dead spots that I have. And they've been able to tack down roots, and as a result, you're gonna get the effect of they're just gonna keep going and fill in. But I thought about this as we're coming into fall. I was like, now that the centipede is going to shut down within the next month, I want to do a pre-emergent for the fall and winter because the centipede's going to shut down. It's not going to spread laterally anymore anyway. So I figured, let's try to prevent those winter weeds like henbit, and I get a lot of hairy bittercress. And also, now is the time to put your pre-emergent down for Poa annua, which a lot of people have. It's kind of pain. It dies off in the spring from the heat. It usually dies off around May. But if you don't hit it with, if you have a Poa annua problem and you don't do it a pre-emergent in the fall, it's going to just keep reappearing every February, March, and stay until like May. Um, so I want to try to prevent those this year, and I figured, hey, if the centipede's going to shut down, and I've done all the spreading I can do this year. The centipede has done all the spreading it's going to do. Now's the time, as the soil temperatures get down to about anywhere between 55, and 60, 70 degrees. That's when you want to kind of lay down that pre-emergent and water it in so that barrier is set in your soil. And then really that's what, and just keep mowing. As far as fall care goes, keep mowing until it shuts down, and try to keep any leaves off of your centipede if you can bag, or if you have a very good mulching mower, you can mulch your leaves. That's fine. That's putting organic matter down back into the soil, and it'll break down over time. You just don't want a whole lot of clumps that can suffocate your grass, because centipede, man, that stuff will not like any kind of clumps that are down there, and you'll just see bare spots as a result. So I try to like to bag my clippings to keep the leaves off. I'm not out here like a maniac bagging them like every few days, but you don't want those leaves to sit on there longer than 5-7 days. You want to get them off of there, and just let the sun, whatever sunlight you get, you want that beneficial sun even going into the fall as the temperatures get lower. So just to recap, those are the main two things. You can kill two birds with one stone, like I said, with a pre-emergent that has a 007. That'll get down a little bit of potassium, as well as get your pre-emergent down for those winter weeds. Or you can do separate applications. You can do a bag of sulfate of potash, or just if you can find muriate of potash, you can do that. But like I said, I would tend to want to do the sulfate just to have a less salty product in your yard. And then just I recommend a pre-emergent. Like I said, you can find those at Lowe's or Home Depot, as well as garden shops, and they're cheap. I mean, a bag of pre-emergent, you can get a giant bag of it for like 25 bucks or less, maybe even 20. And that can last you several falls, So I hope this is helpful. I hope it makes sense. I just wanted to give some tips about fall going into winter, and how to kind of prepare your grass to go to sleep. Don't do too much to it. Don't hammer it with one of those winterizer products. That's more for Bermuda and aggressive grasses that need that nitrogen going to sleep. Centipede does not need that if you've fed it correctly throughout the year. But even if you haven't fed it, that's fine. Just leave it alone. Prevent any kind of centipede decline. If you hammer it with nitrogen toward the end of the year, like in October, you could have something called centipede decline and have all kinds of problems. So stay away from that, and just remember those two main points: pre-emergent and potassium, and you'll be fine. And just keep mowing at your normal height. I do 2 inches back here because I do have some shade issues. But just do that and let it naturally go to sleep, and just keep your yard clean. Keep all the debris off of it. And I hope you guys enjoy walking in your yard as much as I do in the mornings. This weather is gorgeous. So y'all enjoy your fall out there, and I'll continue to do videos as I think of topics. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you want me to cover a topic with centipede, and I'll be happy to share what I know, and we can learn from each other. Thanks, and y'all have a good day.